Hi everyone, and welcome to video 4 on the 8-part video series, Understanding Painful Emotions. My name is Renee and I am a relationship and life coach from Make the Move Coaching. And today's video is all about fear. So this is a really big one, okay? If you're new to the video series, welcome. And if you're a returning fan, please welcome back. So let's get right into it. So in today's video on fear, we're going to be looking at the scale of fear-based emotions. We're going to look at the positive purpose of fear and also the impacts of fear. So fear is one of the 6 umbrellas of painful emotions, along with anger, sadness, shame, hurt, and also guilt. And if you remember back to the introductory series, introductory video, there was some theories about, is there a difference between, feelings and emotions? And there was one theory amongst many other theories that the 2 primary emotions are love and fear. So this is particularly important as well, as we'll see. So fear really is an unpleasant emotion caused by the perceived threat of danger, pain, or harm. So perception is a really important factor here, because what one person might be afraid of, the other person may not be afraid of. So it's very much based on your perception. There's also different types of threats to safety. There's threats to our physical safety, our emotional safety, our psychological safety, and also our financial safety, and probably a few other areas. So back in ancient times, it was very much about our physical safety, but in modern times, other things like emotional and psychological safety and also financial safety are becoming increasingly important. And fear is often experienced with other emotions like anger. So, it's quite normal and common to have a range of emotions that we experience along with fear as well. So just a reminder about where painful emotions come from. So as humans, we're all trees in a forest, and every tree is different, but the root structures are generally the same. So we all have our past, our conditioning, our positive, our negative experiences that influence and shape who we are, and that includes shaping our limiting beliefs. So limiting beliefs are essentially a belief, and a belief is just a thought on repeat. A belief that's ingrained in our subconscious mind about our certain views on the world. So you might hear people say things like, oh, that always happens to me, or that'll never happen to me. So they're usually absolute statements, but often in a negative context, which is why we call them limiting beliefs. We also have our personality. So as humans, we're highly adaptable. We have a whole range of internal personality traits and managers. We have some people who are maybe, have tendencies to be the rescuer or the fixer. Some people have the wounded child archetype as well. And there's no judgment attached to that. It's just part of our human psyche and how we actually adapt. But it influences how we experience emotion as well. We also have the central nervous system. So that includes our nerves, our brains, and those are also linked to the endocrine system, which includes our glands. So for example, when you have a thought, the brain sends a signal to a gland, which then communicates with, say, your adrenal glands when it comes to fear, to pump all the adrenaline, which gives you the physical feeling of that emotion as well. Our emotions are also influenced by our thoughts, but what you might not know is that only 5% of thoughts come from the conscious mind. And with 95% of thoughts coming from the subconscious mind, which is just the automatic mind, it's very difficult to use conscious thought to get out ahead of emotion, to manage emotion. So the roots of the tree structure are there, and just keep in mind they're different for different people in terms of what limiting beliefs they have and, what personality traits they have as well. But essentially all trees are the same in terms of our structure, and the same goes for humans as well. So if that's our foundation, our root structure, there's then an event when it comes to fear. So something that scares us. And that triggers the emotional response, and that manifests in a range of physical symptoms, which we'll come to in a moment. So fear, the umbrella of fear, has a range of different emotions. So this is just an indicative scale. This is not an absolute scale. It's based on my personal perceptions. And as you look at the scale, you might have some views of your own. You might feel like different emotions are stronger than others. So just keep an open mind about it. But starting on the left-hand side, where you can see the early signs of fear might come up around with feelings of being doubtful, unsure, concerned, worried. So worry is quite a strong one as well. And then we move more into feeling nervous, fearful, afraid, scared, and then up to really severe emotions of fear, which includes feeling intimidated, threatened, anxious, panic, and ultimately terrified, okay? So that's the scale of fear-based emotions. But fear does have a positive purpose, and ultimately it's really to keep us safe. It's protective, it sustains life, but it can also cause us to make different choices from a positive or a negative perspective. And here's an example. Say you've had a really, a car accident, and you might decide, well, from a positive perspective, I'm going to make a different decision. I'm going to do better driving behaviour, or I might get a car that's a little bit more structurally secure. And a negative experience or a negative choice from that same experience might be things like, I'm never getting in a car again, which is limiting and restricting. And obviously, as humans, we all have our free will and our free choice. But that's just an example about how fear compellers can make better decisions, or sometimes some limiting decisions as well. There are some quite strong impacts of fear. So on a physical level, based on traditional Chinese medicine, it really impacts the stomach, okay? So the stomach is also linked to our solar plexus, which is our place of personal power, and it's also the place of where we feel fearful and anxious as well. So it does impact the stomach, which ultimately impacts your whole digestion. And fear triggers the adrenal response, which sits on top of the kidney. So that's where your adrenal glands sit. So it can affect your kidneys and equally your bladder. So for example, people are feeling quite nervous and afraid, even if they're doing a presentation at work and they're feeling nervous, often they'll want to run to the toilet or something like that, because the body is getting rid of any excess fluid because it's going into fight or flight mode. And equally with anxiety and the impacts to the digestive area, there could be appetite changes. Adrenal fatigue is a big one as well. So even things like constantly getting tasered by, emails or text messages, it's like a zzz, zzz, zzz. And that can cause a really slow burn of adrenaline and also cortisol, the stress hormone cortisol, which can have quite significant impacts over a long time. Fear also creates muscle tension because we're often getting ready to fight or flight, and also causes insomnia and fatigue. From a mental health perspective, our ability to make good decisions gets clouded. We can't think clearly. There's excessive worry. So the mind is just racing. And that can actually escalate to anxiety conditions, paranoia, and even things like panic attacks. And in very severe cases, some people might even choose to isolate. They might not be able to leave the house or feel safe to leave the house. It affects relationships in different ways, but one of the big ones is people's inability to trust people or to have the need for control. And they also, because they're fearful, they may withdraw, they may feel disconnected, they might be isolated. In terms of behaviours, addictions, and also like disordered eating can come up because it affects the digestive tract. When you eat, the peristaltic action of the digestion, where your muscles are like breaking down the food and pumping it through the digestive tract, that can actually have quite a relaxing effect. So people tend to sometimes eat their emotions. We talked about isolating the self, but also controlling behaviours can come up. So and obsessive compulsive behaviours as well. So people, to feel safe, if they're afraid, will start to try to control their environment and even some of their relationships as well. So in summary, fear has generally quite a positive purpose. It is protective, and our subconscious mind is hardwired to keep it safe. You can't turn fear off. It's actually life-sustaining as well, but if not managed responsibly, can have physical, mental, relationship and behavioural impacts. It can escalate to anxiety conditions, paranoia or obsessive behaviour, so really important to get some help if you're feeling a lot of fear or anxiety. And also keep in mind that the response to fear will be proportional to the perceived size of the threat. So some people will have a quite strong reaction to certain circumstances based on their perception of the threat. And that's why it's also important to understand that as humans, how we are different. So what's scary for someone might not be scary for someone else. I have no problem with public speaking personally, but it is actually the #1 fear in the world, even above the fear of death, because it's just so exposing for a lot of people. So when you're witnessing other people experiencing fear, if what they're afraid of is something you're not afraid of, it's always good to be compassionate and understanding. So that's really important as well. But if you need some help managing fear or any anxiety conditions that you may be experiencing, I do encourage you to speak to a professional therapist, a life coach, counsellor, and also a holistic wellness practitioner if that's something that resonates with you. And further support is available at Beyond Blue as well. So that's fear. The next video we'll be looking at is video 5, which is all about hurt. So if you've enjoyed today's video, please pop some comments, your thoughts in the comments below, or if you have any questions, you can ask them too. So that is today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. Have a fabulous day and wishing you all the very best. Take care now. Bye.